Hello, everyone. Welcome to another virtual astrology club. This time we're going to be talking about June. Let me get myself situated here and get my notes up. I hope everybody had a good May or is having a good May. I guess it's not quite over yet. If you're coming in, this is a live stream. There is a chat. I encourage you to use it. Don't be shy with that. If you have any questions throughout this time today, I'm going to be here for probably an hour and a half. That's usually how it goes. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. There's about a 20-second lag between this, Zoom, YouTube, the whole deal. So if you do notice that it takes me a minute to get to it, don't panic. I'm going to be checking in periodically. So if you're watching this, subscribe, smash, hit, whatever, slap the like button. I got to come up with all of the thesaurus, the words about that. Okay. So we've got June. I like June. I'm a big fan, much more of a fan of June than I am, as far as summer goes. If we want to just talk about summer, June is decent. July is decent. August has some things, but it's doable. September is what I want everyone to look out for. And, not to doomsay, but to be real, and I'm going to share my screen here. I'm just spouting off. To be real, like, we're planning stuff now. I know that everybody's getting booked out for weddings and family gatherings and graduations and all kinds of stuff now. Like, we're all getting booked out till then. So if you're currently planning things for like September, just, stay tuned. I'm going to be talking about that more later, clearly, but it's not and the reason why, I'll just say it before I get into this month. Like I said, I'm just kind of going off the cuff here. We're having Mars in Gemini. That starts August 20th. But then there's a Mercury retrograde in Virgo in September that's ruling over that Mars in Gemini. And I don't love it. I don't love it for a number of reasons. But, so much about Mars and Mercury have to do with our doing and our saying of stuff, our transporting ourselves, through travel, mercantile exchanges. So all of those things are going to be a little funky. So again, if you're making logistical plans now for September, just be extra careful making them. That's kind of the name of the game. If we know it's raining, we're going to bring an umbrella. Okay. So this one's going to be, I don't know how this is going to be. Mercury is retrograde right now. The sky weather's it's been a little, it's just fast. Everything is like in fire and air right now, and everything just feels a little scattered. So I apologize in advance if I am. I'm going to try to keep it on the straight and the narrow. As if you know me, if you've been watching me, I go off on tangents, but that's okay. How about, them eclipses, right? If we want to do I like thinking about like old business, new business. Before we get into the month, I do like to think about what has happened a little bit. And what we've had are a pair of eclipses. We had that eclipse in Taurus on April 30th, and then we had the eclipse in Scorpio on the 15th. So we're not quite done with that lunation yet. If we want to just go to now, this is now on the clock, on the zodiac here. We got Mercury retrograde in Taurus. We've got Sun in Gemini right now, and we've got the moon here. Not quite done, but we've only got about 3 more days until this lunation is complete. So if you have things that kind of cropped up during the eclipse, granted, I know these things go in about 6-month cycles. So a lot of times, if people are like, oh, what's going to happen on the eclipse day? A lot of times, it does take us to watch these cycles over 6-month periods to kind of see how the cookies are going to crumble, so to speak, how things are going to turn out. So, not saying that you might have noticed anything already, but if you have, just know that, this lunation isn't even quite done yet. There's still more to see. There's still more to sit and observe about. If you're in the chat, say hello. If you want to, again, if you just got here, you can ask me questions. I'm always like that I do a live on IG twice a month first Tuesday, third Tuesday of every month over on Instagram. And that's just for question asking, but it's kind of the same deal here. Not saying I'll be able to answer it, but if you do have a general astrology question, let me know. Probably not going to do any kind of personal chart questions, but if you have anything about the weather coming up, or any technical questions, please let me know. All right. So let's talk about it. So I had mentioned that right now, what we had in the past was a much wetter, moister scenario when everything was in Pisces. And whenever there's a lot of water and moisture, there's more of an inward receptive kind of vibe. It's not outward and active as much. And it's much more emotive and feeling. And there's connection, there's connectivity that can happen with water. And what we have now is much more of a dry, kind of fiery, hot situation. We've got a lot of air happening. We've got a lot of, with Saturn, Sun, we've got a lot of fire. Once we do get into June, we're going to have Venus in Earth. So that kind of does help cool things down a little bit. But I think the good thing to know is just that, anytime there's not a lot of water, slow it down, pump the brakes, make sure that we are taking our feelings into consideration, other people's feelings into consideration, because that's harder. It's just harder to do when we're not in water. Later in the month of June, though, what we're going to see is Sun is going to go into Cancer. So that will kind of become our little anchor in water, if you will, for the month of June, while the rest of everybody else is kind of being fiery and airy, intellectual and active. So that's kind of general vibes, general change in vibes for the month. Let's see what else we got here. Jupiter is definitely in Aries. There's definitely a lot of planets in Aries. I can tell. I don't know if anyone else can tell. Like things have, even if like outwardly things have not sped up yet, at least for me, especially since Mars just got in here just in the last 48 hours, I have been feeling much more wanting to get up and go, much more ready to do the things. So if that's you as well, if you're feeling like the fires of urgency, the fires of self-righteousness, they're coming, just sit tight, be as patient as possible. I know we're definitely things are going to move fast, whether or not we push it. We don't have to push it. Things are going to go fast on their own. At least that's my opinion. That's what happens when we have a bunch of stuff in Aries. We just are much more having a tendency to act on what we're thinking. And with Mars there, with Jupiter there, with Venus there, that is our desires, that's our motivation, and it's our understanding and our knowledge. So all of those things are we're cooking with gas, definitely. Let's just go over, kind of a little, I guess, I'm going to just quick talk about the big, dates. Here's your dates for the month. So as far as stations go, we've got Mercury stationing direct on the 3rd. We've got Saturn stationing retrograde on the 4th. We've got Neptune stationing retrograde on the 28th of June. As far as ingresses, we've got Mercury going into Gemini on the 13th, Sun into Cancer on the 21st, Venus into Gemini on the 22nd. Lunation, we have Sagittarius full moon, Cancer new moon. That full moon is going to be on the 14th in Sagittarius and on the 28th in Cancer. What is cool about June, and this is why I say I like June, this is the main reason. If we look at the chart, we can see that we're going to have, well, we don't have it quite yet, but eventually, like I said, Mercury is going to be getting into Gemini there. We've got Venus in Taurus. We've got Mars in Aries, Saturn in Aquarius. So, and eventually the Sun will be in Cancer. So we're going to have a lot of planets in dignity in their own home. So what does that mean? Why is that cool? Why am I like, wow, June is great? When a planet is in their own sign, it basically says that they have the resources, they have the things that they need to do their job the best. So it's like being someone who is very skilled at what they do, and they're in a position where they're very capable of doing all of that because they have everything around them they would possibly need to do that thing. So for instance, Saturn has been in Aquarius, very capable of building, constructing, deconstructing, reconstructing systems and structures, especially the invisible kind of systems, not the Capricornian brick and mortar ones. Mars and Aries, very able to Mars, very able to act, be decisive, do the things, put the fire behind the thoughts that Jupiter is having in there. Venus and Taurus, very able to cultivate the growthy, nourishing things that she needs to feel comfortable. She's able to exercise and embody her values. It's like if Venus values kindness, she is so capable of doing that in Taurus, you know? And then Mercury is going to be in Gemini eventually this month, where they have all of the resources they need to do all the communication, all the exchanges, all of the resorting and reconfiguring, recombobulating, as we say in the Milwaukee airport. I believe it's the only airport in Milwaukee that has the recombobulation sign. That's what's going on in Gemini. And then finally, we've got Cancer. We've got the sun is going to be in Cancer, but we're going to have a really nice new moon in Cancer eventually here. And yeah, all of that just speaks to a lot of success, like, and not success in like a victory sense necessarily, even though Mars and Jupiter are down there, as in like efficacy, effectiveness. When these planets are in their signs, they are so much more able to be effective. So whatever we are doing, I'm not saying this means it's going to be super happy, fun time, amazing place, but I do think that June really holds a lot of potential. If we do have things we've been kind of sitting on, maybe not actually acting on, maybe, you know, for whatever reason, maybe there's perfectly good reasons, reasonable reasons why we haven't been kind of getting to do the things that we want to do. But June is going to be a good time to do that. Especially like Mercury into Gemini on the 13th. What kind of came to mind there for me was just like, I'm from Minnesota originally, so we have hockey there. And whenever you get like a player in a penalty box, you know, there's not enough people on the ice. There's usually, I forget how many. Oh, my friend Jen is going to be so embarrassed that I don't know how many people are supposed to be out there. But when someone is in the penalty box, you know, you don't have the full team. You don't have the full strength of the team. But then when that player gets back onto the ice and they got their full numbers, the announcer would always go, full strength. And like, that's what I feel like June is like. We're finally kind of getting everybody out onto the ice, out where they should be. Not a good Northern Hemisphere summer analogy, but that's okay. So let's see, let's get more specific. Let's do the Virgo things. That was more of the Pisces broad view, but let's get more into the deets. So a lot of nice sextile energy too. I guess maybe one more broad perspective thing is that I like this month of June because there's a lot of energy between Gemini and Aries. I mean, there is right now, and there's going to continue to be that, which is really nice. And we're also going to have, you know, Venus interacting with the Cancer place too by sextile. So all of those things are going to be really kind of constructive, more helpful than anything. So June starts with Mercury becoming visible. So anytime a planet is within 15 degrees of the sun, we can no longer see them in the sky, you know, especially that morning sunrise sky right before sunrise or right after sunset when we've got those twilight conditions and we can kind of see the planets on the horizons. Mercury is going to be in the position to rise in the morning sky on June 1st. So that's how we enter the month. And, you know, there's other technical details when planets get closer to the sun where they don't quite function like they should. And that can come out in a lot of different ways. Some of them honestly aren't necessarily undesirable. You know, some people like secrecy. They like kind of more of the hidden nature of a planet, you know, really close to the sun where we can't see it. But what it also kind of portends, especially with Mercury being our planet of communication, of speech, of planning and executing those plans, you know, using logistical things. It hasn't been quite as capable as of doing that out loud. And what I kind of wonder is when we get to June 1st and we get Mercury coming out of the beams of the sun, I have a feeling that things that have been left unsaid, plans that have been left done, for instance, we're going to start to see it a little bit more loudly. Now, Mercury is still retrograde. That whole that whole plot line has not yet resolved, but things are going to be a little like, as far as Mercury is concerned, as far as our communication, exchanges of ideas are concerned, I think that's going to become louder and louder and louder as Mercury kind of gets their head on straight in the month of June. So again, just to speak to more of like May, if things have been a little stalled, a bit kind of here and there, touch and go, don't feel bad, don't guilt yourself or anything. The sky weather has not really been great for that. And that's why I kind of said last month to just let things unfurl and just kind of be what they are. Okay, what else? Do my little Marco Rubio water sip. Does anyone remember that? That was so many years ago. God, that was funny. Oh, yeah. Then another thing today, too, or this day on June 1st, was that we're going to have Moon in Cancer, which is very nice, right? Moon is able to do all of its mooning, which is being comfortable, taking care of the body, taking care of the emotions, making sure your space is safe and happy. But then Mars is here overcoming square in a very powerful position. So I would say, especially if you're relating with moon people like caregivers, nurturers, women, plus those folks, maybe do it at night when Mars is a little bit less rowdy. So I would, try to avoid any kind of altercations verbally on this day. It's a nice day, but I don't love Mars bringing in that tension on that square. So it's a little crunchy. I think the next moon in Cancer is going to be much, much better, the next time around, because then we won't have that as much. Will we? Yeah, I don't think we will. So with this Mercury stationing here too, so Mercury had stationed at 26 degrees of Taurus, and there's actually a lot going on at that degree in general. We can see that it has a trine with Pluto over here in Capricorn. It's squaring up with Saturn in Aquarius, and it's on the fixed star Algol as well, which I'm not going to speak to. I think I had mentioned that last month, so go check that out. I had mentioned it with the eclipses, but that is where Mercury is stationing here. So it is a heavier type of energy. Mercury stations, and then on the 3rd of June. So let's just go to there. On the 3rd of June, Mercury stations, but it really just hangs out, and it's been hanging out with Saturn, and it'll hang out in this square with Saturn for another week. So on June 10th is when Mercury finally starts to move on and really pick up speed and get away and do its thing. But until then, it is in this overcoming Saturn square situation. And it feels like just a very serious talk. I think, April 30th, when we had that Taurus new moon, it was just nice. It was nice sky weather. It felt very hopeful and just growthy. And we had, Venus and Jupiter in Pisces, and it was like I had mentioned, miracle grow in the garden. And now it's more like a little bit of a reality check on the things that might have been brewing then. So if you do run into some limitations in the beginning of June, if we run into some delays in the execution of those mercurial exchanges or plans, just hang in there. Because again, as Mercury moves away from Saturn, as Mercury gets out of Taurus in that square position with Saturn, and as Mercury gets into Gemini and into a trine position with Saturn, I have a feeling that things are also going to start to move a little bit more smoothly then. That really, really helps. We'll have, more toward the end of the month, last half of June, we're going to have Saturn, Mars in a sextile, and Mercury sextiling those things as well. So to me, that just looks like the engines of the machine just moving a little bit more effectively, so to speak. Oh, hi, Mercurius. Oh, yeah, that's right. That reminds me. Happy Norwalk, everybody. I totally forgot that it was the Norwalk weekend because I'm not there. Duh. I won't be able to forget it now. I'm feeling so much FOMO. Oh my God. I hope everybody has all the fun. I hope everybody is safe. I hope you all find the weed that you need. Like, I wish everybody the best of times, and all of the learning. What else? That reminds me. Another little sidebar here, a little little housekeeping thing. I wanted to give a shout out to another astrologer. His name is Nate Craddock of Soul Friend Astrology. Please go get a reading from Nate. They do just regular traditional astrology, like Western traditional astrology. I've had readings with Nate for that. I've had readings with Nate. Now, though, we've been working with Jyotish, and holy cats. First of all, if you're a traditional or Western astrologer and you want to experience, and especially if you've been studying for a while and you've kind of forgotten what it's like to be new to astrology, go get a consult in Jyotish where you can't even read your own chart while they're talking. It was like such a valuable experience. But again, that's soulfriendastrology.com. That's where you can find Nate Craddock. Get some readings from them. Absolutely amazing. And two, very supportive. If you know me, you know that I will not cry in front of you usually unless you are a paid professional. And he's a great paid professional to cry in front of. He's very, very sweet. So if you're like me and you're like not wanting to be that way, he's a good person to be that way with. Okay. That was a nice little commercial break. Not a sponsor of the show. I just really like his work. So I wanted to do that. So Mercury stations direct on the 3rd. Thank fluff. But as we know, as we just heard, we're still squaring Saturn. Things are not fast. Things are not just going to buzz off into the breeze. We had that Mercury cazimi on the 21st of May, so just 5 days ago. And that was kind of the middle of the Mercury retrograde story. So if you find yourself in a Mercury retrograde plot line, especially if you find yourself in a Mercury profection year by Time Lord technique, if you find yourself having a chart that is very mercurial in nature, like let's say you've got Virgo or Gemini on the rising or on the angles or something like that, and you're much more affected by Mercury, you might be finding yourself in that kind of situation where this Mercury retrograde has created a whole thing. If that's you, again, just hang in there. Things are slow. And just because Mercury stations direct does not mean everything gets resolved. It takes Mercury time to start moving more quickly. And when I say more quickly, like, how do we tell? It depends on what software you have or what you're looking at. It depends on where you're getting your information. But if you can find the planetary speed, Mercury usually goes about 2 degrees. When he's going really, really fast, it's 2 degrees a day, approximately. And so if you see Mercury and they're only moving like a half a degree a day, that means they're going slow. And when Mercury is going slow, that means all of Mercury's things are going a little more slowly as well, including communication, getting the news we're looking for. If you're waiting to hear back on something, like all of those things are going to be, if you made a purchase and you have not gotten it yet, all of those things. So again, give it another week. Mercury retrograde tip. Very sad for my friend whose emails were deleted. But if you are, here's a tip for Mercury retrograde. If you're writing an email, write it in, or any kind of document, and you're writing it in a browser, don't write it in the browser. Write your email in like a notes application or a Word document or something like that. Maybe even Google whatever it is, because it can get erased if there's a glitch in the browser internet kind of situation. Lessons learned the hard way. I have done that as well. And actually over the last few years, I personally have a whole document I have aside as kind of my scratch paper, so to speak, that I craft emails upon before I put them in the browser. So that's my little email retrograde tip, if you want it. Okay, wow. We are like 25 minutes in and I am only on the 4th of June. Moon does, what am I saying here? I'm reading my notes and they don't make sense. Surprise. Yeah, okay. So at this point, the moon is doing this thing where wait, no, I'm just going to ignore that. Ignore me. Okay, stop ignoring me. I'm ready. On the 4th, let's just go to the 4th. I don't think there was too much else I wanted to say. I guess the moon is opposite Saturn. Any day where the moon is opposite Saturn, it's actually going to be the 3rd and the 4th. Those are delays as well. That's getting stuck in a traffic jam. That's wanting to be your own kind of expressive self be engaged with moon and Leo and kind of being forced to be kind of in the purview of the systems that might be a little bit prohibiting. That's kind of the vibe, unfortunately. But I do like this trine coming from Jupiter too. It's kind of annoying because it's like Jupiter and Mars here just throwing fuel on the fire here. They're kind of telling the moon, yeah, do the thing, be you, be fabulous, be fantastic, live out loud. And then like moon tries to do it and it just runs into Saturn. And it's not just the usual Saturn either. It's like Saturn just stationed retrograde. So if you want to look at Saturn here, they're at 25 degrees of Aquarius on the 3rd of June. And then on the 4th of June, we see that they station retrograde. So not only is the moon applying to Saturn in an opposition, but Saturn is also applying to the moon. That's not usually the case. Usually they're kind of bumping into the back of each other, so to speak. Like if you're in cars and one gets rear-ended, this is more like a head-on collision. So I feel like it's going to be just a little bit stronger. So if you run into some opposition, even just like, just because of being in a pandemic and all of that stuff. I mean, clearly Saturn in Aquarius has been a reflection of the restrictions that we've all had to live with that. So I think we might feel that particularly on this day on the 3rd and 4th. So Mars and Jupiter is going to be interesting too to be dealing with. I love it, like especially if you are someone who has a hard time kind of being loud and taking up space, wherever Aries is in your chart, like let's say it's in your 4th house of home or parents, it's kind of a good fuel to help yourself be more assertive in those spaces. So maybe this month you can be more successfully assertive with your parents if you have Aries in the 4th, or what would you be? That would make you Capricorn rising. Or if you have Aries in the 1st. And maybe for some reason you're a little bit more meek. Maybe now is a good time to kind of come forth and present yourself in a really confident way. So I actually really love Jupiter and Mars being together in Aries like this. That being said, it can be a little spicy. It can be a little self-righteous with Mars and Jupiter there. It's like Jupiter is it's the I know, function of us. It's the I understand, I get it, I see the picture. In Aries, it's a little quick to know. It can be a little quick. So sometimes we got to put the brakes on it. But with Mars there, especially now we're like using that quick ability to know in pursuit of something. So it can get a little, I think I'm even talking faster. So it can get a little bit much. So just make sure that we're being considerate and all of that boring stuff. This Saturn here is going to be retrograde until October 23rd. The slower the planet gets, the less I care about the retrograde cycle itself. I care about the retrograde and the direct stations, because around those times, especially when those planets are kind of hanging out at those degrees for so long, it is much more of a stronger presence of that planet and their significations. So while Saturn is stationing here, as much as all of these planets are going to be coming into their signs of dignity, Saturn retrograde, it does, it speaks to kind of going back to the drawing board a little bit, maybe going back and just reconsidering how the systems of our life are working. And if we do need to tweak some things, it's a good time to do that. But certainly Saturn retrograde does speak to, of course, delays and reversals of the Aquarius parts of our chart. So if that's you, go with it. Don't resist the reconstruction. And on the 5th, so that's when the moon meets Saturn. It's like the moon is happening upon this across the way. It's like, oh, shit. Oh yeah, and then that's in a T-square with Mercury. So check this out. This is a little crunchy. So we've got that opposition trying to balance between expressing and emoting in a way that really suits what we're interested in Leo, having to kind of work against and kind of push and pull with the systemic limitations that we're dealing with. And all the while, Mercury is here kind of trying to communicate and keep the peace, I think, and keep things stable. Venus is here giving Mercury directives saying, yes, we would like things to be harmonious, please. And Mercury is going to try to appease that. So this is kind of tense. This is kind of tense. If you feel like you're mediating something, if you feel like you're trying to navigate some choppy waters using your linguistic prowess or your charming nature, that might be stressful, but you also may be able to do just that. All the while, again, these three are, or these two here are kind of egging on the moon. So I think we're gonna want to be a certain way, but I don't think we will be able to be. Okay, what else? I'm gonna check on the chat ski. Thanks. Glad that was an appreciated tip. Yeah, don't write the stuff in the browser. So the following day, on the 6th, now, right now, we while we have Mars in Aries, and again, that's for several more weeks. That is for the month of June, pretty much. And while we have Saturn in Aquarius, whenever the moon is in Virgo, it's going to be avoiding both of those two. So I like how the 6th and the 7th feel. I like how, any of our endeavors for refining some details of our plans, especially our material world things. If you've got any material world kind of things that you need to maintain, whether that is in your home, whether that is just your material possessions, your bank account, anything that you're maybe building, arts and crafts projects, any kind of craft. I think of Virgo as like the master crafts person, always kind of tinkering away at finding that perfection with whatever they're doing. I think we're going to have a lot of power to do those things, to manipulate our material world, to manipulate our material plane a little bit more easily on the 6th and the 7th of June. If you got bank account stuff to do, that might be a decent day to do it. Yeah. Could also be a good day for negotiations of material things. Again, Mercury isn't moving super fast, so I don't think that this like says that anything that is negotiated is going to happen quickly. But with Pluto here in the end of Capricorn, Moon is going to be at the end of Virgo, Mercury is going to be at the end of Taurus. All of those planets are in trine supportive relationships, and it has to do with Earth. It has to do with our management of the material world stuff. So again, might be a good day to do those things on the 6th and the 7th. All right. And then the 10th, we get a Mercury trine Pluto. Yeah, I had mentioned that. So Mercury is still trine Pluto because, again, Mercury is just hanging out. There's actually a few of these. And it's kind of an interesting thing because I think about Pluto being kind of a troublemaker, but I think it can also, especially in a trine relationship, it gives us, if Pluto is a difficult influence, when we have planets that are in trine to Pluto, it gives us an opportunity to kind of wrangle those difficult, complex, twisty topics that Pluto might be doing. So if that's you, look at where these Earth signs are in your chart, look at the houses they're in, write down some of the topics, the house topics, write some of those down in a list and see if any of them pertain to your life. You may have some leverage here when Mercury is trining Pluto to either have conversations that allow us to work with those difficult Plutonian transitiony or transformational things that are happening in Capricorn. If you find yourself in a position where you yourself are like a marginalized person and you need to leverage a little bit of manipulative grit, which sounds like weird advice or like very unwholesome advice, but coming from a place where like I see marginalized people have to like navigate really fucked up structures, I don't think there's anything wrong, or systems. I don't think there's anything wrong with trying to like navigate those things skillfully because they're already corrupt in the first place. Wholesome currency does not realistically work when we are navigating them. So if you are, it's good to watch out for other people being manipulative, in kind of less wholesome ways. But if you yourself are just trying to survive out there, April 28th, we already had that. May 25th, June 10th. So May 25th just happened. We're still around that. But June 10th as well is going to be another direct hit of that Mercury trine Pluto. Now we can see a dispersal or trying to maintain resources, trying to reduce loss of resources, plans on how to upkeep structures or ways of living that are sustainable. So much about Taurus is about maintaining things in a consistent way because it's that fixed sign. Capricorn likes to maintain structures it's for different reasons. It's more of just like, we put a lot of work into this over a long period of time, and damn it, we're going to keep doing it that way. That's more of the Capricorn vibe, but they both kind of can come together in this kind of pursuit of maintaining and managing resources, hopefully in a way that is sustainable. What I don't, or I guess what we don't like to see in these places is when we get stuck in ruts. And when we think about earth, we can think very literally about like a rut in dry, hard, cracked earth where, the tire very easily slips into that rut. If you're trying to plow a field, you don't want to have to deal with any of that bullshit. You don't want to have your tractor and your things getting pulled into these ruts, because that's what happens. It's like in water, it's like getting pulled into an eddy almost, but in earth, it is more of those rut type of structures. Pluto to me kind of feels like that power that kind of keeps us in there. And kind of almost even sometimes things that are out of our control that can keep us in those ruts. And as I was mentioning last month with the eclipses, I think Uranus, Rahu, all in Taurus really speaks to breaking up some of those really hard ingrained ruts. And maybe we can leverage Pluto with Mercury on these days. Again, that was 4/28, 5/25, 6/10. All of those dates are when Mercury is trine Pluto. So see what you can do, see what you can manage. What other notes? I had some other notes here. One of the things that gets kind of funky with Pluto, I think sometimes, is that like it's almost like, especially in Capricorn, and maybe this is more of a Capricorn thing, but it's like trying to keep up with the Joneses. And like you see that it's like the people who make enough money to get like a mortgage that's not reasonable at all. They've got like 2-3 cars. They've got just this whole lifestyle just kind of built up around them. And to keep those systems rolling in Capricorn, sometimes like we get into all kinds of unsavory kind of lifestyles and situations just to keep up with all of that. And I think it's time to take a second look at some of those things. I think this is good weather to kind of be diving into those topics a little bit. And just with values as well. I always think of Taurus with values and these conversations we can have about our values and how, are our values being reflected in these Capricornian structures we've all built and that we're all kind of forced to exist in. But certainly like, even with values, we can get a little overboard. And if we want to talk about Pluto being hyperfixative and just kind of obsessive, anytime we get really hyperfixated on one thing, it's pretty much never a good idea, right? If we only value love above all else, and not in the cool Buddhist sense, like in the relationship sense where you just forsake everything for a relationship, or money, you only value money and you forsake everything else for money. That's probably not good either, right? So looking at that in our life and making sure that we're not letting Pluto and Capricorn kind of strong arm our values into any kind of way that doesn't feel, kind of good and constructive. Oh, wow, people. Oh, there's people. Oh my gosh. Let me see if there's any questions. Oh yeah, you can come in late. Yeah, this is actually a good point. And I usually say this and I forgot. You can leave and come. This is like a public venue. I might as well have like a digital tree stump that I'm like yelling upon. So you can come and go as you please. I won't be offended whatsoever. Oh, hi, Gabrielle. Hi, Kate. Yeah, we're talking about June astrology. Sorry, Gabrielle. I'm sorry if I'm confusing you. We run fast here. That's so funny. So I kind of wondered how this would go being live. And I think I had my first person who accidentally ended up here in astrology land. That was just so cute. Oh, Kate says, I think an opportunity for ingenuity with Uranus and Taurus. Absolutely. Absolutely. Gosh, who was it? It was someone on Twitter. Hold on. Let me just be slow for a minute and think of who it was. I think their account is just Gemini. I think their account on Twitter is literally just Gemini. And they had mentioned, I think it was them, about Uranus. Or sorry, no, it was Aquarius. They were just talking about Aquarius. So they were not talking about Uranus. But I know that a lot of people associate now Uranus with Aquarius, and the whole ingenuity, innovation, invention thing about Uranus, 100% true. Also true for Aquarius. And so it's really easy to really, they fit together. That's like a Venn diagram that's overlapping very well. But what the Gemini account on Twitter really brought home was that we don't actually need Uranus to get us there in Aquarius. So here's how I was thinking about it. And I think this is somewhat how they were thinking about it too, is just that it's the father, like I think they said Aquarius is the father of invention. And then I was thinking, well, necessity is the mother of invention. And when we think about Aquarius, it's the end of the winter in the Northern Hemisphere if we're doing tropical astrology, tropical zodiac, then that means that Aquarius really represents kind of that middle fixed portion of winter. It's not the beginning of winter. It is when we only have a few potatoes left in the cellar, and we have to have a real hard look around us in Aquarius, very objective. You have to detach yourself emotionally from the situation to be like, how many potatoes do we actually have? How many people do we have? That's not good. Goes to drawing board, does a bunch of math, figures out how we're going to feed these people, right? That's kind of what goes on in Aquarius. And I think that need to survive at the end of winter, that kind of vibe that is ingrained in what we know about Aquarius. It's also this place where there's no sunlight, right? It's where we have like the least, well, we're starting to grow sunlight after the solstice, but there's not a lot of sunlight. It's not very growthy and nourishing and warm. We have to get resourceful. We have to be ingenuitive. So this is where I'm coming around, Kate. I make long points. I'm sorry. Ingenuity, innovation, resourcefulness, all of those things are what Aquarius is so good at. And it's because you have to be, otherwise you'll die. Very Saturn. And it's air. So this is an intellectual experience. So I feel like, but also, Uranus does fit with that incredibly well. So that's why this is a good co-ruler. Good co-ruler. But thank you for bringing that up. That's a really triple word score. Ingenuity. Yeah, the Cosmos sent Gabe, but he ignored the call. He ignored the message. Oh my gosh. Yes. Oh, another fun Saturn thought. This is going to be like a 2-hour long thing. I'm sorry. Deception. I was thinking about secrets. I was thinking about being in the 12th house, or like because I kind of want to do a lecture on like secrets and where like all the different ways we can find secrets in the chart. Because if you look at like the bonding of the moon, the new moon, the bonding of the moon and the new moon situation, though, you can find secrets that way, hidden stuff. You can go in the 12th house. There's some secrets in there usually. But I looked up, Saturn significations, and Valen said Saturn is about deception and secrets. I was like, wow, that makes a lot of sense. And I thought about a really kind of benign example too, because it's such a loaded term, secrets and secrecy and privacy. We have so many things that just come up emotionally when we hear those things, probably because of betrayal, life. But I thought about like stick bugs and animals that are camouflage. I am being deceived, and I think the stick bug is a branch. I am clearly being deceived, but it's a matter of survival. And so I feel like with Saturn so many times, and, maybe Mars is the malefics are part of this, but it's survival. Once Jupiter and the moon and Venus grow it, who's in charge of making sure that it survives? And sometimes I think Saturn and Mars kind of get in charge of that. And deception and camouflage and being a stick bug all kind of fits in there for me. That was quite the digression. Okay, let's get back on the trail. I always say in my consults, I feel like it's kind of inspired by that map territory analogy with the astrology chart, with our birth charts. But it's like walking around in the woods, and we kind of, say, oh, let's go look at that bush, let's go look at that tree, and then we go explore it, and then we kind of get back on the trail. And there's so much to look at, there's so much to see, including my notes. What do they say in front of me? Oh, the moon squares Pluto on the 10th. Yeah, I don't really care. I guess I should, but so on the 11th, this is kind of fun. Venus is going to be conjoined with Uranus. And this, I am a big fan of Venus and Uranus together. Just a couple little anecdotes. Like, I have had many an artistic breakthrough when our Venus is with Uranus. I have had, oh my gosh, I won't say when, I won't say who, but I had a girl friend, like a friend who is a girl, kiss me out of nowhere once on a Venus Uranus conjunction. So that was fun, totally unexpected, and like it was great. And then what else? There's all kinds of, it's just like, or like I discover new things. So I have discovered new fizzy water, a big preference thing there with Venus and the things we enjoy, like eating and listening to, discovering new music, discovering new versions of the stuff that you like, which is hard for Taurus. The astrology podcast, I'm not done listening to it yet. I listened to the first half of it today, the Taurus episode. They talk about this. So if you want to know a bit more about, I'll just kind of leave it to them. I think I'm not going to go and wax poetic about Venus and Taurus this month. If you want to know about Venus and Taurus, go listen to that astrology podcast episode, because they do great service. But yeah, on the 10th of June and the 11th of June, those are 2 days where, I mean, heck, even like the 9th, 10th, 11th, keep your eyes, your ears, your senses peeled for the next best version of the things that you like, because those are the fun things that happen. Now, I guess other side of that coin, things to watch out for. If you are trying to have pleasure, if you are trying to pursue comfort, Uranus is disruptive. It's interruptive. So you might run into some little snags. Now, granted, you might also have some happy accidents then as well, as Bob Ross says, but it can be a little bit disruptive. So don't get too frustrated if you notice that those things are happening. Mercury's here, still moving kind of slow, so not really helping. And if you're trying to connect with other people, if you are, granted, I guess depends on where it is in your chart, probably a lot, but especially if you have this in one of your peopling houses, like let's say you're a Pisces rising and you've got Taurus in the 3rd, or maybe you're a Scorpio rising, you've got Taurus in the 6th. Any of those peopling places, you might run into maybe some misconnections with people, miscommunication, or just not miscommunications necessarily, but interruptions in trying to connect with others in some way, shape, or form, or interruptions in trying to connect with your pleasure in some way, shape, or form. So that can also happen. So I don't want to, tell you that you're definitely going to find the next best fizzy water, but you could. So at this point, we do have the sun coming into a trine with Saturn as well, not quite. But we have on the 11th of June, we can see that sun is already at 21 degrees of Gemini. It's about 4 degrees away from Saturn at 25 Aquarius. This whole month with sun in Gemini and a sign-based trine with Saturn and Aquarius, that is very much our voice of reason. Whatever passions are flaring in Aries, in the Aries part of our chart, whatever desires are kind of pulling at us in Taurus, I think the planets and the houses in our chart that hold Aquarius and Gemini are our voices of reason. So if you are kind of needing to have a cool head on your shoulders, look to those influences, I think. It is an intellectual type of thing. So I'm not going to say that whatever we're building here or reconstructing with Saturn, I do love those keywords, but it is not the physical variety. It is systems, it is ways of living, it is ways of thinking, it is the way that we collect information and kind of use it in our own path. And we might be doing that a little differently, but I do think that it's going to be really constructive this month for us. So I don't mind at all that trine. I actually really like whenever planets are trining with Saturn in Aquarius. I've been digging those times for the last couple years. Oh, cool. And then on the 13th, Mercury ingresses finally. Claps. And we also get our first lunation of the month coming in with the moon in Sag opposing the sun in Gemini. So let's talk about that. Mercury is going to be, again, for the second time, coming back into Gemini. And is that now we're at full strength. Now we cue the hockey full strength announcement. I'm still laughing about Gabe. And not the Gabe we all know and love from Astro Twitter. This was some poor random person who wandered into the wrong lecture. Oh, that's kind of funny. NORWAC is going on. Make sure you don't wander into the wrong lecture. I guess that can happen, huh? That's so funny. Oh, I want to see if I missed anything on the 12th. No, we'll talk about it in a minute. So what else is cool here is that Mercury, not only is Mercury in Gemini back into its domicile, now able to communicate more easily, exchange ideas, come up with ideas, research stuff, bring in information. We're able to do all of those things more easily. And it's going to be in a sextile relationship by sign, well, and applying by degree with Jupiter in Aries. So this is awesome. This is very much like a scholarly, scholastic kind of powerhouse, because we've got Mercury who likes to think and explore ideas and write and collect I guess, yeah, it's more the collection of data. Virgo is much more in charge of the organization. Once Gemini pulls everything in, then Virgo is in charge of kind of sorting it out and figuring out how we can best apply that information in a real world setting, Earth with Virgo. But Gemini is much more that ethereal, ineffable mind kind of cognitive process that happens that we can't see. And it's just getting jet fuel from Jupiter, who is, again, just a seeking knowledge, questing thing. It very much cares about, justice, truth, knowledge. And so if all of those things are in fire, it's like we want to act on them as well. So, I guess just because I tend to, and maybe I'm projecting because I just have said stupid stuff that I regret, but I think we've all said a lot of stupid stuff that we regret. And not that I think people are going to be saying stupid stuff, but if we are that quick to speak here, I think with Mercury getting this sextile influence, it's almost like making it easier for Mercury to Mercury in a really enthusiastic, boisterous way. So just make sure it's on that end of the spectrum. It's enthusiastic, it's fun, it's bright, it's youthful, it's Aries, and then it's not a self-righteous douchebag kind of situation. That's what we don't want. Okay. That's your warning, but it is a sextile. So usually those come out just fine. And it's half as good as a trine, allegedly, according to the ancients. So now on the 16th, or no, let's talk about this lunation. So on the 14th, we're going to get the moon opposite sun. And so what that means, a full moon. The moon is going to have its most light out of the month. And so we get the most activity pretty much out of the moon for each month. So everybody hears about full moons and people end up in the emergency room and people act crazy on the full moon. I think I said this last month. I'll say it again. My hypothesis, my theory is that it's not that we're like more activated. I mean, maybe we're more emotional because the moon is our emotional body and it's very bright. But I think just more activity means there's just the probability density of us having certain types of interactions is increased. It's just like the more prescriptions I check, statistically speaking, the more chance of errors you're going to have. That's just how that works. So I think there's a little bit of that too. But it's happening across a mutable axis here. We've got mutable Gemini, Mercury is in-house to witness it, which is great. So, the sun is getting that very helpful, skillful direction from Mercury during this full moon. And the moon is in connection with Jupiter. So all the parts can see each other. So this full moon feels like kind of a cool time. I believe there were some limitations. Hold, please. Yeah, I said it could be cool as long as it's not weird with Neptune, Saturn's involvement of uncertainty and certainty. Yeah, that was the interesting thing. So, to me, this looked like a really nice energy just because Sagittarius is positive. It's an optimistic, positive type of feeling. And I feel like after some of the heaviness that we've had in the prior weeks, having a nice, bright Sagittarius full moon would be a nice palate cleanser, kind of. Really speaking to I guess I didn't speak too much about the Gemini new moon. I covered the Gemini new moon. It was right before June started. I covered that in the last video. Check out VAC for May. I cover it there. But whatever we started on that Gemini new moon, whatever new starts, fresh starts that we might have intentioned upon, now we're really kind of seeing how that might have come to fruition. And if we had any kind of ideas, I think those ideas and understandings, and I say that because those are Sagittarius, Jupiter kind of words. If we're coming into some good understandings on the 13th of June, pay attention to them because they might be brought on by this energy. And like I said, like Jupiter is in good shape. They're in good working order to understand stuff and to act on that understanding in a way that just feels very effective. Again, Mercury's direct in Gemini. So whatever we are doing with this full moon, I have a good feeling about it. I don't feel any kind of hesitancy about this lunation and using it for things. But what is kind of funky though is that we have Saturn at 25 degrees, which is pretty close. It's going to happen at 23. I know the moon's not quite there yet. And we have Neptune at 25. And what they're importing, Neptune is uncertainty. And it is square this business. And it also, though, is kind of forgiveness, surrender, and acceptance. So if whatever's happening on your full moon on the 13th, 14th, as that's coming in, if it's helping with surrender, acceptance, any of those more positive, forgiving Neptune kind of things, I think that's great. But if you're feeling uncertainty, if you're feeling fogginess, that could be causing a little tension. I think especially Sagittarius, they want to just kind of go for what they believe in. They want to just make the quest. They're not afraid to just pack up their shit and go. But I think the uncertainty here is a little uncomfortable. Most humans don't love uncertainty. I think that's what brings most of us to astrology is uncertainty, right? Because we want to know. And then Saturn is here as well. And they're the opposite. They are certainty. They are, how sure are we? Do we have the evidence for it? Do we have the experience that corroborates? And that's at a sextile to this. So I'm not really sure what that's about, but it just feels like there's a bit of a clash here between kind of wanting to know more than what we are going to know. So if you don't have all the details, could be because of that Neptune there. But otherwise, I really like this lunation. I think it's just great. And then on the 16th, we're finally going to get that Sun Saturn trine. So that will complete on the 16th of June. That's a Thursday. So this is a good day. I mean, the moon is here too to kind of support whatever analytical, information-driven processes we're doing. If you've got some spreadsheets to make, boy, this looks like a good day for it. If you want to sit down and just crank out some spreadsheets, June 16th and 17th, that's a Thursday and a Friday. Any kind of cognitive labor that we have to do, these are going to be some good days for it. Cognitive labor was one of my favorite words because it describes something that no one sees or talks about. Okay, what's the chat say? Oh, I see familiar names. Hi, Lisa. Thanks for coming. Okay. Yeah, we're hoping for happy accidents, Mercurius. That's what we want. Our best art is happy accidents. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And that's why it's so crucial in the creative process. Oh, maybe these are Scorpio, Taurus thoughts. I'm not sure. Maybe they're Aries, Libra thoughts, but they're certainly Mars and Venus thoughts that the process of creating, you got to be vulnerable. Dr. Brene Brown also talks about this in her talks about vulnerability and how she'll go to a company and be like, well, how's your creativity going here? How's your ingenuity going in here? And everyone's so afraid of making mistakes and looking stupid. No one wants to do that vulnerability thing, that no creativity happens. And I can relate to that so hard. I went from doing ballet to like burlesque and pole and all these crazy aerial art forms and stuff. And it was entirely different. And it really was a whole thing of like having to allow and stop being so Virgo. I see a lot of gymnast ballet folks with like Mars, Virgo placements because it's very codified and specific and detail oriented, and your hands have to be just so and blah, blah, blah. Versus like these other art forms, it's like, do whatever you want, show up in a trash bag and eat chicken wings on stage, and people will throw money at you for some reason. Like that's a lot of vulnerability. And that's a lot of allowing for those happy accidents. And the best art I've ever seen, like wigs are lost, like that's the best art. It's the messy art. As much as I love Cher and auto tune and all of that stuff, we need our messy art as well. So maybe that's a good Venus Uranus thing, is messy art. Okay, wait. Oh no, you guys are talking. Okay, let's see. Where's your Mercury? All are talking. That's good. Lunacy. Yeah, lunacy. That's a word. Triple word score. Oh, Lisa's waiting for information to come in so I can make some decisions. Yeah, okay. So I guess one little detail about that too, more at the beginning of the month when we've got, I had mentioned that June 1st, Mercury comes out of the beams. When they're 15, they get 15 degrees away and they rise in the morning sky. And, there's a couple different concepts here with any planet being, under the beams of the sun, combust within that 8-degree range, which is even more intense. But then also having that planet be in its own home sign or in its chariot, as the medieval folks would say, I believe. And that was seen as like a loophole. So any damage that might be wrought upon that planet from the beams of the sun being so harsh and hot and dry, being in their own sign. So for instance, I guess maybe this was earlier when Mercury was still in Gemini and having its time with the sun. It was very short-lived. It was Kazemi for most of it. But Mercury wasn't technically harmed being in Gemini that close to the sun. It was still able to do everything that it could do. But I still wonder if that being under the beams still just means it's quieter. We're not going to hear it. We're not going to see it as much until it is visible in the sky. And I keep finding it keeps happening when people, especially like people waiting for communications to come in, they're waiting for an answer. They're waiting for a package. They're waiting for their review to come back to see, they're waiting for their scores to come back, their grade on a test to come back. And it doesn't come until Mercury gets visible. So yeah, I would hang in there till May 31st or June 1st, and hopefully you'll be getting the news that you need. Yeah, big information month, getting, processing, thinking. Kate says that's a good point. What does Neptune retrograde behave like? That's a good question. I mean, I guess like I was saying before, like whenever a larger planet is in retrograde motion, apparent retrograde motion, I don't think too much about it just because they're in that position for so long of the year. Like when Pluto and Neptune go retrograde, they're retrograde for like 4 or 5 months, but it's the station that that's what I look at. That's what I pay attention to. And it's just that planet's lack of motion. It's like, imagine hitting a note, like if you have a piano in front of you and you hit a key on that piano and you just keep hitting it like over and over again. And you're just like, okay, I get it. So Neptune, I just like would consider, at least on the stations, strong Neptune, strong confusion, strong delusion, strong illusion, but also strong acceptance, strong forgiveness, strong spirituality, strong being able to connect between those immaterial and material worlds and planes. So Neptune stations, I'm going to be, maybe doing some spiritual woo-woo stuff. I'm not going to be doing my material world. I'm going to be doing art stuff, not like taxes or forms. But as far as the actual Neptune retrograde time, no offense to anyone who, finds meaning in it. There's meaning in everything, but I personally don't too much. Nothing like a Mercury retrograde. And that's a good point too. Actually, it's really good you brought that up. Thank you. The faster the planet is, the more personal, acutely, viscerally we're going to feel it. So Mercury retrograde, Venus retrograde, even Mars retrograde, Jupiter, all of those like closer visible planets that are moving faster, their cycles move fast enough that we can actually perceive them a little bit more in that cyclical kind of way. Versus like those outer planets, it's when I don't know. I've had Neptune on my moon for like ever, and it's going to continue to be. And I have been feeling that on like a daily basis. So I'm not going to say you don't feel, the outers on a daily basis, but I'll get back to you because I guess I have Neptune. It's going to be retrograding over my moon. So I guess if I'm going to answer this question of what is Neptune retrograde like, you asked me at the exact right moment, because I'll observe. I'll get back to you next month, or ask me in 6 months. Because I got a front row seat. So far it sucks. I don't like it. Having Neptune over your moon by transit in Pisces is like going to one of those like that I've been watching George Gallagher comedy from the 80s. And he was one of those first comedians that would like smash stuff, or I guess I don't know if he was the first, but he was the guy that smashed the watermelons. And all these people from the 80s, it's like going to a Blue Man Group concert, you put up your plastic or whatever. Just getting sloshed around a little bit. But what else? Good question though. I love ballet too. I actually put on my point shoes last night and I was bad, but that's okay. We still do it. Yeah. So being open to mistakes. And what's so interesting too is I've heard these arguments, and this is me, being a perfectionist, a recovering perfectionist forever, that perfectionism really plays into all of these really fucked up systems that we have that are kind of entangled and wrapped up with white supremacy and capitalism and all of that stuff. Like everyone's so afraid of making mistakes that we just keep up with status quos. So I think the more we can condition ourselves to survive mistakes, be more open to making them, be kinder to people who do make them, I think that's an upward spiral thing. It's weird to think about. It's kind of almost contradictive, like, because we think, oh well, if we want something to turn out really well, like a society or a group of people, we strive for perfection, right? But perfection isn't real. It like doesn't, like, none of the extreme exact like none of the absolutes are really that real in the real world. So it is better to kind of let it go. That's kind of that notion too of valuing one thing above all else, and I think a lot of us do value perfection above all else. And that's hard though. That's one of those easier said than done things, that I would never judge anyone for being a perfectionist at all. It's hard. Yeah, good point, Mercurius. So on that note about, Mercury being in this instance, in its own sign, so protected from the beams of the sun in its chariot, you can think of, or like a tractor cab where you've got that cab over you in your tractor, in your chariot, and it protects you from the sun. That was not only said, some authors said, not only the sign that planet rules, but also if they're in their bound, or triplicity, that is also said to speak to that. So, or sorry, their triplicity, or no, I'm mixing up my terms. Sorry, bounds or terms. If that planet is in its own bound, its own term. So if Mercury is in the bounds of Mercury, if Mercury is in the terms of Mercury, bounds and terms are the same word, then it also is protected. And I kind of, I don't want to I'm a little skeptical about that, but honestly, it is the only explanation for me. I mean, my Mercury should be way less functional than it already is. And I think the only reason my Mercury has maintained any of its functionality is because it is in its own bounds. So I can't help but be on board with that. So thanks for bringing that up. Brene Brown's awesome. Yeah, I love her. I'm just responding to things in the chat if anyone's like, why is she jumping around so much? Yeah, Kate, and that's a good point too. There's this idea that Mercury might be handling the sun's rays differently than other planets as the relationship is closest. That's what Kate says here. And I mean, it makes sense that that could be different. I mean, just the very notion that it just might be more used to it, it's just used to that condition, so it doesn't even think about it. Just how we normalize even things that are difficult in our own life, we kind of normalize that, and we kind of think that that's just normal to have that difficulty, or everybody must have this difficulty, or we just don't know what it's like to not have that difficulty. I kind of wonder if it's like that too, at the very least. I don't have anything really mercurial evidence to back up that statement, but from a kind of conceptual point of view, it makes a ton of sense. Yes. Cool. Great comments. Thank you, everybody. I love that. That's why I'm doing this live. I wanted to continue the engagement that I had from the private Zoom things that we were doing. Let's get back to it. So we were on the 16th of the month. We had Sun trine to Saturn. I think it's some good constructive criticism for the sun, maybe let's see. Sorry, I'm back to the beginning of June. We got to go back to the future. Okay. So we had Sun trine Saturn, and the moon is here too. And it's a nice, bright moon still. It's waning, but still bright. And Saturn is in this retrograde place. And it is in the kind of redoing, the reanalyzing, the reconsidering of these systems or ideologies in our life that Aquarius can have. And it's kind of feeding that information into the sun here in Gemini. And that feels constructive because it is a trine. It's not warm and fuzzy, like the kind of criticism that barely even sounds like criticism, like the constructive feedback that gets so sandwiched in between compliments. It's not that. I think it's going to be pretty dry, pretty real, pretty harsh, but it's also going to be super helpful advice. So if you are having kind of an authority figure come into your life and give you the cold, hard truth on this date on the 16th or 17th of June, that might be really helpful information. Even if it's not necessarily what we want to hear, I think it could be some helpful info. And then Venus applying to a square with Saturn as well. So that can feel a little heavy. It's like, our planet that just wants to connect and relate with people and feel decent and comfy and have a kind of harmonious, stable existence that we know what to expect. There's no surprises here. It's getting a little bit of pushback from Saturn. Again, probably systemic pandemic related things keeping us from enjoying the things that we want to enjoy. That could be the case, but just for a day or two. And it's like I said before, when the moon was opposing Saturn and I was talking about like a head-on collision, this is another one of those two where, because Saturn is retrograde, and this goes for any planet, so as well as Neptune retrograde, any planet running into them by aspect, now that is a double kind of, those two planets are both moving into each other. And so it might be felt as a little bit stronger. We could say that. That makes a lot of sense. It's like a double application. Sorry, I know my mouse is like everywhere. It's because I don't know how to use my technology yet. But that's okay. We're learning slowly but surely. And then the moon is going to conjunct Saturn on the 18th. 18th is when that Saturn Venus square profects. And we're going to get that Mercury sextile to Jupiter finally. So this day, on the 19th, I'll be Juneteenth. We're going to have this beautiful Mercury Jupiter sextile across fire and air. So this is spirited. This is passionate. This wants to kind of speak forthwithly. Moon is in Pisces, so we are a bit sensitive today. So, and the day before, day after, maybe a little bit too. And it takes 2.5 days for the moon to get through a sign. So we know moon is going to be in Pisces for a couple days here. Yeah, sun is now separating from Saturn, which we like. So this is a good idea to take ideas that you have had, any brainstorming that you've been doing, the cognitive kind of all the little details, all the little pieces of the plan, all the little info that comes together to create a story. This is a great day to do that. So if you are trying to craft a piece of literature, if you are trying to craft some kind of thing that's trying to communicate something, today is a good day to try to communicate those ideas, or at least get those ideas down onto paper. And the feelings are here too. We got the feelings, they're involved. Got a little bit of water on this day, which I like to add to that. So nice day for that. So if you are someone who, maybe not maybe you don't think of yourself as like a creative artist, but if you are someone who is creative in terms of philosophy, if you're someone who is a tinkerer of ideas, like this is a really good kind of election for that. Yes, yes, indeed. On the 20th, we got last day of the sun benefiting from being in the same place as Mercury. So the sun's been benefiting from having Mercury in house, able to direct and guide them, give them the information they need to help these decisions and actions along in Aries. All of that's been moving very, very, very well. Anytime there's a sextile, we do need to put in some effort forth. It doesn't just fall into our lap like we kind of think of with the trine. But it is certainly an effective sky to be working under. And on the 21st, we have Cancer season. So happy Cancer season. I don't know what kind of music we cue for Cancer season. I don't know. I feel like techno would be a good like entrance music for like Gemini. Maybe some smooth listening, some easy listen, that channel that your mom listens to as she drives the minivan. That feels like really good entrance music. No offense, Cancer. It's gonna be a square with Jupiter. So we have, okay, this is kind of fun though. So we have Jupiter square the sun, and anytime we've got a sun squared Jupiter situation, it is another thing that can really help put fire under us to get, to take action, to start things, especially in these cardinal signs. We have that energy to begin. It's like, what do we want to do? What do we want to grow? What do we want to, especially in Cancer, they want to just create the kind of environment we want to grow the stuff that we want to grow. And it wants to just be involved in that process of nourishing. And there's so much action to get things started and get things going. Now, any projects you do take on in June, I would say make sure they're of the maybe shorter variety. All of these planets in Aries that are saying yes to things with Jupiter, and they're saying, yeah, we'll do that. We can do that. Especially now with the sun in Cancer, we may be even more likely to have our eyes bigger than stomach and kind of take on more than we want, take on more than we should. So don't be saying yes to everything in June. Don't, be discerning, try to have some discernment. And if they can be shorter term projects, which Aries is better with, it's short bursts of energy. It's not the stamina, that's more Scorpio's department, is stamina, endurance, that kind of stuff. But it could be a good time for those opportunities too. It is a time where we might feel a little bit more vital. Jupiter and sun both help, also Mars square sun. This kind of feels like having a bit of traction under our feet. It's like we have a little bit more energy to run, and we've got more traction to do it. Yeah, I like it. It's not like, squares aren't comfortable, but whatever. They're not supposed to be. Oh, for those of you who are interested in Algol, I went too fast. On the 20th, Venus is going to be on Algol. Now, I don't know a ton about the fixed stars, to be perfectly honest. Venus is here in Taurus, and Algol is one of the stars in that constellation. And, you know, who I did hear do a really good rundown of that is on, I wrote it down here, on 5/11 on May 11th. I attended one of Spencer Michaud's podcasts, or not his podcast. He's got a YouTube channel, and his last name, if you want to look up Spencer, it's M as in Michael, Ichaud as in Delta. And they had S.J. Anderson on, and they had a great discussion about Algol. So go over to Spencer Michaud's channel and watch that 5/11 YouTube episode. They have a really great discussion about like dark feminine myth. So if you're interested in any of those things, they do great service to that. But that is of interest on the 20th of June when Venus is on that place in Taurus. And then we get Venus entering into Gemini after that. So that's kind of the last thing she does. She tangles with Pluto here as well. So this might be, you know, we've got that focus, that hyperfixity that Pluto can bring. We call it obsession, and that's trickling down very easy to Venus in our relating and our place of preference, of vice, of value. So if you feel a little extra pulled into indulgence on the 21st, I mean, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you find yourself clinging a little too tightly to things that feel good, you might want to just like pump the brakes for a second, because we might be kind of pulled into that sticky, sweet kind of allure that Pluto has that isn't necessarily healthy or good for us. But then after that, we get Venus being super, super analytical. She's going to enter and be at the beck and call of Mercury in Gemini. So this is where we can really put that in, that ability to take information. And now Venus is there to maybe make it charming. It's like, we're going to be charming. Other people are going to be charming. Our interactions with people are going to be more fun, flirty, vivacious. That's what I always think about when I think of Gemini. Especially like Venus and Gemini. They're always just like super able to meet anybody where they are and just like flirt with them, you know, like they could charm anybody. It's like it's almost like the air Venus of Libra. We get a little bit of that going on here, and I think with Mercury being here, it's going to be super effective, especially being Mercury is now getting fast. So if I guess, you know, if you have Saturn's retrograde, I don't care. If you have networking things to do at the end of June, that last 10 days of June, if you've got social engagements, this is where like I think that functionality is going really, really well. I like that very much for all the socializing. And now we've got a little bit more water on the map too, and that makes me feel safer. So that water element keeps things cool. It keeps things connected. Without the water element, we get a lot of activity. We get a lot of things bouncing off each other, but we don't get a lot of things sticking together. It's like if you've got a bunch of dry ingredients in a bowl and you're trying to make bread, you need eggs, you need oil. That's your water, right? That's your connective force. So I think once we get Sun into Cancer, that is going to be like adding that egg to that mixture so that we can actually make some dough out of this business, cook some bread, hopefully. Oh, I got distracted. The closer. Uh-oh, we got someone who drives a minivan. Hopefully I didn't offend you. Kate drives a minivan. That's fantastic. They listen to trap music in the minivan though. So we love that. That's fun. Spencer is great. Spencer Michaud Astrology. Another shout out to another great astrologer. Yes. So we have Moon, just misses out on being co-present with Venus on the 23rd. I was really hoping that, we get the moon one last time in Taurus with Venus, but that doesn't happen. We just miss it. And another thing too, I guess that's good to note. So June 22nd, what I want us to watch out for, the moon is going to be enclosed by malefics for part of the day. So I got to get rid of my pen. Let's go by the hour. So this is more, okay, so June 22nd, that's a Wednesday. And this is earlier in the day, 1 p.m. Central Time. Well, more like 2 p.m. Central Time. That'll be noon on the West Coast. That'll be 3 p.m. on the East Coast, Wednesday, June 22nd. The moon is going to start to be enclosed between a bodily conjunction with Mars, which you will be separating from, and then moving into a sextile with Saturn. Now, sextile, not much damage or harm can come from that. So it's not going to be anything, it's not going to be anything big. But it could just be a little, again, I love the word crunchy because it just denotes some of the kind of tension, especially interpersonal tension that we can have with others or just inside of ourselves when we're around other people. It might be a little bit of that, but I'm not too worried about it. But the moon being in between malefics, don't love to see it. It's not a good time to start something. So if you want to start a project later in the day on June 22nd, just don't do it. Don't start anything. People say that more with like the void of course moon. Well, for me, this is like the thing. And then that's done by like 9-10 p.m. Central Time. So it only lasts for like the afternoon and the evening. Just park it just don't do it until the 23rd. And then the moon will be in Taurus. She'll be exalted. If you're going to be doing stuff, that's a much better day to be doing stuff. Every month I like to pick a few days where the moon is interacting with Mars, where for me personally, and it depends on who you are. If you're a night baby, this is not for you really. This is more for day baby, people born in the day. But any day where the moon is interacting with Mars by hard aspect or conjunction, those are my days to just mind my own business, watch my own bobber, not be commenting on Twitter and getting into arguments online or anything like that, because it's just going to be easier. And maybe the better, more general blanket advice for a night chart would be anytime the moon is in a hard aspect with Saturn, you might want to just expect some delays or some coldness or just slowness or something on those days. It's just good to set our expectations. But the 22nd is that day to mind my own business, if you're a day baby. And then on the 24th, the moon does meet. It is in Taurus, which is great, but it does meet Uranus. So that's our monthly reminder to write on your calendar to relax your shoulders. So June 24th, we got the moon coming in with Uranus. That can just be like kind of a tense, it's electric. It's very, it's fast. It is disruptive, it is erratic, it is a bit chaotic, and we can find ourselves just feeling a little tense or a little restless on the day where moon is with Uranus. So if that's you, just relax your shoulders midday, take a deep breath, put an alarm on your phone to force you to do that. And then on the 26th, was there anything else? Not really. No, not really. I mean, we do have, just to note at this point, once Venus enters Gemini, Sun enters Cancer, they're both going to be applying to Jupiter. And that is very cool. So that'll be the case for the rest of June. That's very nice. So, whatever we are trying to grow in Cancer, Jupiter's given us the hell yes. They are cheering us on. They are saying, yes, you have the right information. You have the correct understanding. Go for it. Just don't take on too much. Don't be saying yes to everything. And then Venus is also going to be approaching a sextile with Jupiter, which of course, like if we already weren't charming enough with Venus and Mercury and Gemini, now it's going to be even more enthusiastically, just more, it's like charming, but now with maybe cocaine. Like if anyone knows what that's like. So could be fun, could be too much. Not sure. It's a sextile, so I don't think it will be. Maybe if it were a trine. Let's see. Yeah, it just looked really constructive. I like that. Once Mars enters Taurus, that's the other thing too, is Mars in Aries does speed everything up so much. And, I know that I'm not the only one that is going through difficult things right now, life transitiony things, losses, whatever you want to make of it, whatever's going on. It doesn't help when things just go so fast. So I was thinking yesterday, I was dancing and I was going way too fast on my pole. And I used to just give up. Like I used to just like let go, be like, fuck this, I'm too young to die. But what I've started doing over the last few years is I'll just hang on, and it'll be a horrible pole pass. It'll be, we call it a pass when you kind of approach the pole, do some stuff, get off of it. That's called a pass. It's a horrible pass. I'm not going to end up achieving anything or doing anything or making any cool shapes. But if you just hold on, you're at least building forearm strength. You're at least building grip strength. And so you just like, that's the advice. And I was like, oh, that's actually really good life advice as well. Like you build strength just by holding on. So if that's you, if you're struggling, if shit's too fast, just hold on. You're building strength, even if it doesn't feel like you're doing anything constructive, even if like things are not happening the way that you feel like they should. Hang on. And then once Mars enters Taurus on July 5th, so that's when that is. July 5th is when things are going to slow down. So if you can just hang on for June, just let things happen how they're happening, trust in the sky that these planets, they're able to do what they're doing pretty well. This is the month to do the things for sure. So then at the end of the month, we have this Cancer new moon, which I love. Wow. So nice. Now it is, by sign, we've got Pluto, we've got Mars. That's happening. That's definitely happening. So, I'm not going to say that this is like a tension-free lunation. But a Cancer new moon is a Cancer new moon, just like a Taurus new moon is a Taurus new moon. We like them. We like them. And, moon is in their place of home, their domicile. So they have all of their gardening equipment. They have all of everything they need to make everyone comfortable here in Cancer. So I really liked it for that reason. I guess, even though we do have Mars square, we also have Jupiter square. And there is that kind of relationship, and it is very close. So there's a bit of it's not quite, reception by domicile, but Jupiter does have exaltation in Cancer. And so it makes the connection a bit stronger, even that Jupiter has this square with these planets in the place of its own exaltation. So that just felt very like a good time to seed things. Yeah. I feel like it's I do feel like it's a nice time to intent. I'm not going to be too critical of this one, I don't think, outside of that square between Mars and Pluto. But that doesn't really perfect until a few days later. Yeah. I don't think there was anything else I wanted to say about that. And with Mars square Pluto. So, it's when our motivations can get fucky. So just make sure that, whatever you're motivated on, whatever you're acting on, just make sure your intentions, your motivations for acting on that thing aren't being like strong-armed into some kind of corrupt funkiness with Pluto being involved. This is where we're acting to try to, make adjustments, to try to hold on to things, materially speaking, because Earth, Capricorn. But I also can't help but think that it's like whatever is going on in the Capricorn part of our chart. So again, look at the house topics. It's like something about that place is having control over Pluto. Or having control over Mars. It's like Mars wants to do its stuff, but there's just something hanging back in Capricorn that is keeping us maybe from doing that to the fullest extent that we could be doing that. So if you do look to that Capricorn place in your chart, make sure there's nothing holding you back left in there that needs to be let go of. So if, and it might not be a tangible object. It might be an attitude. It might be a way of interacting or having a relationship with that resource. It might be an internal kind of thing happening too with that. And maybe that's what that new moon is about a little bit. Maybe it's about really focusing in on that Cancer stuff. My body is mortal. I can only do so much here. There's only so much growth that can happen at a certain rate for it to be sustainable. We don't want to just, do it all here at once. But it is in the name, like we're focusing on the self. We're focusing on caring for the self. We are not focused on building out there. We're not focused on Capricorn, being ambitious and building some civilization and then managing the civilization. We're not adhering to structures. We're going to Capricorn. We're getting into an environment that meets my needs, not keeping up with these environments that really just have power over us that might be not so advantageous. So again, it depends on where it is in your chart, but certainly that new moon, that really does speak to that caring for ourselves and having that be the priority. I do think that the tension here with Mars and Pluto, again, going back to asking yourself if there is anything in that Capricorn place that is keeping you from acting on the things that you need to act on to do the Cancer care that you need to do. There, hopefully that makes sense. And then last thing here, Mercury approaching a square with Neptune to close out the month. We got Neptune at 25. At the end of the month, we get Mercury at 21 Gemini. So it's not quite perfect yet, but I did want to just put it on your radar for the beginning of July, that if you are planning things for the beginning of July, know that we're going to be contending with a Neptune Mercury square. And we treat those a little kind of bit like a Mercury retrograde. I don't think it's going to, I do. I shouldn't say we do. I do. Practically speaking, I'm applying the same strategies to Mercury retrograde stuff that I am to Mercury Neptune stuff. Same real world strategies. And that includes, more time for travel, double checking communications, making sure you were heard and understood, making sure that you're hearing and understanding people, being really clear about communication. And I'm not as worried as I might be just because Mercury is in Gemini. So that, really shores up a lot of things, but it also does make it possible that it could be very Gemini in nature, the things that Neptune is squaring up and maybe causing some confusion or causing some fogginess. So yeah, I just wanted to put that on our radar for the beginning of July. I think that's all I wanted to say about this month. Just that little bit. Any final questions? Any final things I don't get to all the aspects, of course, otherwise we'd be here forever. But if there's anything that you wish I would have talked about that I didn't, let me know in the chat here. I'll wait for a couple more minutes. Yeah, keep holding on for dear life. Yes. Yeah, I think it's good. I think that Cancer new moon is fine. I think it's good, but we do have to manage some of that other Mars Pluto-y stuff. We do have to manage that, I think, to make the most of it. So, well, thank you so much, friends. I don't think there's any other announcements I have. My books are always open. I think it's like a 2-week wait, not even. I'm not going to Norwalk. I'm just here. So, if you need me, send me an email. You can hit me with questions in the comments. Again, thank you so much for joining me. Make sure to hit subscribe, like all of the buttons. AligningLightAstrology.com is my website, www.aligninglightAstrology. My email, if you have questions, or, too, I have a sliding scale. I should mention that if astrology services are too expensive for you, because it's like $150. That's what I charge for a new client consult. If that's too much, if you are a marginalized person, if you fit any kind of marginalized identity, if you're in financial stress, if you're a victim of violence, please email me. No questions asked. I do not ask you for details. I trust you on your word. we have an honor system here, but I have a sliding scale. It's a lot cheaper. So I use that for tutoring. We can use that for tutoring astrology. We can use that for astrology consults, birth chart consults, whatever. But just make sure that, I have a sliding scale. I don't want money to get in the way of astrology, if at all possible. So please, check that out too. All right. And again, to all you who are out there traveling, be safe travels, have so much fun. And then I know that I didn't have, this was my last thing, closed captioning. So the last time I put the closed captioning just through Zoom, you may have noticed, I'm so sorry, I should have said this at the beginning. It's coming in afterwards with the YouTubes. We're going to do the captioning through the YouTube, and that makes it easier, I guess, for folks who need that to find it. So it is more annoying because it's not here in real time unless there's a way to put it. I think you can. Yeah, I think you can turn it on in real time, but the transcript and the closed captioning will be on this video after I post it. So thanks for your patience if you're someone who relies on that. Yeah, it makes sense though, because it makes it easier to search. Okay. All right. I love you all. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Again, ask me questions if you have any. All right. Have a good month. Have a good June.